Hey guys, how's it going? It is Kire here with another Infinite Magicraid video, and in today's video I want to talk about 3 tips to help with more consistent runs here in Infinite Magicraid. And mainly what I'm talking about here in this video is going to be these 3 game modes in this game, whether it be Dwarven Ruins, Tower Mark, and Faction Abyss. These concepts can be applied to all of this. One of them that is an outlier though is going to be Ifrit here. This guy has way more speed than any other boss in the game, so he's kind of an outlier, but only a little bit. Only his speed here, but everything else about whether it be the first 2 waves and then the effect hit and resistance, all similar. Let's get into it. So the first tip is understanding the core mechanics of these bosses, because I was a little overwhelmed. If you start to read each specific boss, there's all these different things to take in, all this information about how each one of these bosses work in the Mark Tower, in the dungeons, and in Faction Abyss. They all have separate abilities, and then each wave of these has different enemies you got to face, and those are all important things to keep in mind. But there is some things that are similar throughout all of this, and I think knowing that is really going to come up clutch in helping you progress. And what that is going to be the effect hit and the speed of these bosses and the first couple of waves, and you can apply this to whatever stage you're on. I think this is a really scalable thing that was definitely helpful for me, so hopefully it's helpful for you guys, which is this right here. So at stage 30, at the first and second wave are going to be 1600 speed with 80% effect hit and effect res. And then the third wave, which is the boss wave, is going to be 2,200 speed. And then the left side is 1,900, and then the right side is 1,800. Pretty much no one's on stage 30. Very few people are, like, let's say 0.1% of people are actually at stage 30. I'm not on stage 30 either. But what I can use is, all you got to do is count down from 20 speed on the boss and everything else speed-wise, and then count down by 4 for the effect hit and effect res. And that's going to apply to every single one of these bosses here. So it makes it really easy to know that, and then going into whatever stage you're choosing, all you got to do is just come down here and go like, okay, this is 2200, okay, that's 2180, 2160, 2120, or 2140, 2120, you know, and so on and so forth. And then especially with the effect hit and effect res, I think that's super clutch, because ever since finding out that you can guarantee reliably land debuffs, like, so Visly is a character I really liked, but I like even more now because I know that I can guarantee the attack down. So then what I do is I know the effect hit / res of whatever dungeon I'm on, and then I just crank it up about 30% more than that, and then that's going to mean I can always rely on this attack down on whatever wave I'm planning to do. So I think that's really helpful. So I have her at 100% effect hit because I believe there's 64% effect res at stage 26. So then knowing that 100% is more than 30% more, and then I've never not landed it against people in stage 26, and I've done this like over 100 times, and it's always landed on all 5 people. So I believe that 70% when I can say with pretty reliable certainty here that it's a guaranteed chance. In Raid, for example, there was always like a 3% chance something wouldn't land unless it said non-resistible. I don't think that applies in this game. But ones that I haven't been able to get consistently are stuff like 30% stuff, like Ben Austin's A2, for example, or I don't have any attributes that are 30% ones, but I wouldn't rely on those until further testing. But the 70% ones, like 70% speed down from Elena, for example, that's something that you can guarantee here with enough effect hit, which I think is really cool that that exists. And if we can unlock it for like freezes or for hard CC, and knowing exactly how much effect hit we need there, then we can even go further. And then some characters would get so good knowing exactly how much effect hit we need to be able to make sure that they always stun, for example. But I think we're close to that. But it definitely at least improves their chances over their normal probability getting more effect hit, which I think is really cool. Knowing that is one step to being able to take on these dungeons. And I like to, this is just me personally, I like to just set a goal on which stage I'm trying to beat and only target that. So for example, I just want to beat 26. Like, I've been able to beat 27 and 28, but I just want to consistently beat 26. And 26 is a big deal just for people in general, because per Catherine, you need to be able to beat it at least 1 time on manual. And then just in general, it's nice because this is the first one where it removes 4-star pieces. And it's totally okay to be doing the ones down here, but I just think it's really important to be consistent with it and not like punch up on a stage that you have like a 80% win ratio on, when you can just do the one previous and be able to beat that totally fine, because the difficulty goes up quite a bit. So we got, 416,000 here for 23, and then we have a pretty big jump here for just going up from one stage. So don't feel bad that you can't beat, one stage, especially on auto. Your potential is going to get highly reduced on auto there, but that's what you're eventually your goal is here. Consistent runs on whatever stage you can possibly do. So then I like to know that and then try to do the same thing for the other stages here. I'm able to beat 26 on this one, on Ifrit, on Negia, but I can't beat it on Growlin here. But it's totally okay to go down lower. It's just nice to know that at least on 26, it has the same effect hit and then the same speeds here, but they definitely hit way harder. They have a lot more health, stuff like that. Okay, so the next tip is speed tuning your characters correctly. Now that we know the exact HP or the speed requirements and then the effect hit requirements, I would say always have, based on your characters, more effect hit than you need to be able to guarantee a landed. If your character has 100% chance to land, you just need to match the effect hit. But if it has like a 70% chance, you need to go significantly higher than that. But then speed-wise, I would say your shielder needs to be faster than whatever boss you're facing. I think that's going to be the biggest thing in helping you survive these bosses, because they do way too much damage to not be guaranteeing you have a shield ready for them on that boss stage. So here's an example of that. I'm just going to show this run here. And then there's another concept here I want to talk about too when it comes to the waves. But mainly, I think this is important, and this applies to pretty much every boss in this game, is you need to have a shield ready to go for this. And I think people make their shielders too slow a lot of the time. And then eventually, when people get Catherine, they want to make her fast because she also removes debuffs. I think the really important thing is just having a shielder go first when it comes to this. So I make sure she doesn't do a shield here. Wave 2 is very difficult too, so I always want to make sure she has a shield as well. But I ban it after this because I just want to make sure every single time, if I clear this wave, she's going to have that shield up. And until this is reliable, then I don't want to do it. Also, a lot of times I'll clear this slow and she'll do her shield right before going into the boss. And that is like a surefire way to guarantee you're going to lose a run if you don't have that ready to go on the next wave. So she's banned. She's not doing it even though she could. And then we end up killing these people here. And then unfortunately, I might ban the attack down too as well to guarantee the attack down as well. But notice how she shields right there. And that move right there does 500% and can one-shot people, especially if it crits, even at full health. So that's another reason why you absolutely need to have the shield, let alone the consolidation too, and an attack down if possible, or maybe stagger the attack down to cover situations where you don't have the shield. Because this shield's on a 3-turn cooldown. And the only other person that's like, see, notice right there, completely one-shotted that person, no attack down. And that is why he got one shot and why it's so important to have a shield plus consolidation ready to go when this happens. One thing to keep in mind about this boss in particular is he's going to be doing his A2 more than you would think because he has 3 moves, but he starts with it and then does another move and then does it again. He's kind of like the clan boss in that sense. So keep that in mind why he's doing it so fast. And you can't keep pace with it until later. He actually gets a little easier, even though his damage is ramped up by now, because he's more predictable in his damage there, because he's doing it every 3 turns. So just a small tip there. I think that kind of highlights why this is so important. And the other characters, I think, don't need to be as fast, but you don't want them to be crazy slow. But at the same time, if you don't have that shielder, doesn't matter what's going to happen, doesn't matter how strong your characters are, you're just going to get bodied. And then because bosses also scale in damage, having that ability that you know it's going to keep pace is really good because you just get outsped really fast. If you ever notice just how quickly you can get lapped by a boss, if you don't have enough speed, like let's say they have 2100 and then you only have like 1700, they're going to start lapping you pretty quick. Is another reason why I think speed's so important. And then also having a 3-turn cooldown shield is really important as well, because a lot of the bosses are on a 3-turn rotation like that. And their best move is something that's going to happen every 3 turns. So in his case scenario, he actually does it every 2 turns, so he's actually a little bit more dangerous than most bosses, because he has a 500% damage move that happens on a 2-turn cooldown in the initial phase, and then eventually he'll transition into a typical, AoE, then the nuke, then a small move. Whereas most other bosses, their scariest move is happening every 3 turns, so you can kind of keep pace with them. That's something, for example, in the Faction Abyss, his move is, he does like a 300% attack, and then a 200% attack AoE, and then a 300% single target move. Let me make sure if I'm correct on that. Yeah, 400%. So it's almost as strong as the single target from Negia, and then he does a 200%. So 400% AoE, 200% AoE with the bleed, and then a 300% single target with the chance to fear. So you want to be ready for this Eye of the Abyss, and he starts with this. So that is why you get one shot. Imagine if Negia did a little bit less of a move, but then attacked everyone with it. That's why it's so scary to not have a shield up, let alone not even a shield up, but a consolidation 2 and a shield up for this boss here. So that is the big thing. Having a fast tank is a really big deal. The final tip is going to be having a plan for the waves. A big thing here, like when you ever see really high stage runs, usually they have Hisonia and maybe like a focus or something like that, or just a ton of shielders to rotate back around to Hisonia. Because what ends up happening is they want a consistent way of being able to beat the waves. And the faster ones usually have like Hisonia go down, and then someone HP burn, nukes the wave, and then reset his cooldowns or just wait for his cooldowns to come up and then nuke that wave. But the issue with that, especially a lot of people survive off shields, whether it be Catherine or a combination of Catherine and Nordak here, is potentially you could drop a shield. And in that moment where you drop a shield, the damage is so high, you just get one shot. Having a plan of attack of some kind of CC or just your CC is your damage is going to be a big deal in being able to beat these stages. That is why I have kind of a combination of that with my setup here, where I CC them with Quinlan here, and then I just let them, the HP burn go down. So it's, for example, we go through here AoE, and then if I had like Hisonia, for example, I would just nuke them and then go to the next stage. But in this situation, this is kind of like a pseudo Hisonia because they get frozen, don't do anything. I just make sure I just get my cooldowns back up. Then what I do is then here's the part that is, this is where potential flaws can happen, and then it gets kind of close here. Even with that setup, it's so clean initially, but I don't have the cooldowns to make sure that it happens again. If I could just skip to this stage, I would do the exact same thing and they would all die to the freeze / the exact same thing, but I don't have the cooldowns for that. So it's I have to find a way to survive and wait for those cooldowns to come back up. So I make sure they always have the attack up or the attack down to land. And then I always have the shield up from Catherine. And those are the things I can rely on. And the main thing is I'm relying on them to not only have those things up, but I wanted to make my DPS make sure they can get them out of there fast enough. And if I don't plan for that, then I think it's really hard to have a consistent run, because what could potentially happen is they go slow. You don't have your Catherine set on a timer here for her shield, and then she shields again, and then you go into the next stage and you don't have a shield for round 3. But if you don't get them out of there fast enough, you don't have a shield, then you just die to the people here that are still alive. So it's a fine balancing act here, and it's difficult, but that is how you get consistent runs. You need to have a plan on when you get them out of there, and you're not only doing that, but you're consistently always having particular cooldowns up to prepare for the next wave. This is all very dependent on the characters you have, so it's kind of hard advice to have. At least you always have Catherine. That's by far the best, but see how kind of close this gets? It's really scary. And if I didn't have very specific things for this to happen, then potentially someone could die here. And I've seen Hoff die in here, and then also it does take kind of a long time, so I don't like that she doesn't do her attack up consistently here. Probably what I'm going to be doing is banning, doing a start. Like, let me actually show you. So let me just get out of this. What I like to do to make sure things happen is you do a starter and a ban. And I think that's a really important thing to make sure this stuff happens. So this is my dungeon team here. And notice how I have ban, but I have starter and then a ban on Squall of Arrows for Hoff. But let me just talk specifically of Visly. So I have her banned here for wave 1, but then I have it starter here for this. So what I'm going to do is actually going to go starter and then a ban here, because I only need her to do this one time. And then what I'm going to do, unfortunate thing is when you do this, you kind of have to let the other moves just happen. So for example, Catherine is someone I would love to be able to go starter and then second starter and then ban. So then she does her main move where she consolidates and does the shield, but then never does them again. But I can't do that because the AI is not smart enough to do that. I can't set that up. So I have to just give up on this because I need this up too, because I don't want to have her split on the Guardian and then the High Spirited. It's just not good enough. I've seen it. It just doesn't feel as consistent. Maybe there's situations where that's good. So don't always think this is the better thing. But for me personally, I like to have both. I like to have that stacking because then I can rely on the shield being every 3 turns. That is why I like that. And then now we have this set up for her to only do the attack down for that one wave. And then it's going to make sure she has it ready for wave 3 of the boss. So now that we have that, let's actually go back in and try it, and we'll see this in action, because I like to have these consistent things always happening at their particular times really matter. Because if we get off sync, then a lot of RNG can happen, and the damage is so high that it really can mess up a run. You can't afford to have these people hit you 1 or 2 times. You know, as you're seeing here, these guys stunned, and then they get people down to about half health, which is really scary. And a lot of times too, Quinlan's actually been really clutch with this with the freezes. I haven't had much like hard CC in my teams, and it's been really nice because when he counterattacks, he has a really low percentage, so I can't rely on it. I don't like having runs where you have to rely on someone to like freeze off that. But look how close this happens, and then people start dropping, people get frozen, and then we're fine. But it is very close. And so now I don't have to worry about her doing the attack down here. She does do the speed up last second, which I'm not a fan of, but I do like to just have it when it's available. And so then she gets the attack down here, so I don't have to worry about the next moves hitting too hard. So like, and also it's just nice to be reliable, because maybe what I could do is have it to where she always does it, but then I have her auto attack as a starter, and then I know she always has it, so then I can rely on her always doing it second turn, which would be sick. But I would rather her just do it there, because it just guarantees that the second move there doesn't have that issue. Then eventually we start slowing her, speeding this up. So then what ends up happening is we're lapping the boss. And what I really like is the updated speed stuff here, so we can see all this in real time and like see our speeds now, because we get to see exactly how fast we're going with the speed up, which I think is pretty cool. And then also we get to see exactly how fast we make the boss, which makes things really easy to kind of calculate there. So that's pretty much it when it comes to how I look at making my teams more strategic. One kind of final tip, I really think just damage is probably the best offense. I was trying to be all tanky and kind of barely survive and like just have a really solid unit there, but I would say having high damage for your either bleeders or your poisoners or your HP burners, ideally HP burners for this, just give them a ton of mastery, and make sure that they do a ton of damage so you can get them out of there in one wave, or like in 2 turns like I have it in that first round. And so like, for example, I used to have him at like 500,000 HP, and then I would have really fast. I just think that's bad, and he just dies anyway. It doesn't matter. So what I ended up doing is not as much HP, but an absolute ton of mastery. So when he actually inflicts his HP burns, he's hitting like an absolute truck. So, and also it's really good for the waves, because having high HP, the damage is kind of similar against the boss because you hit your cap. The waves though, this is where it really matters, and you really do a ton of damage to get those waves out of there when you have a ton of mastery there. Those are my tips here. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. And with that, guys, I'm out of here. Peace.